Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check out their website for this and other great podcasts. You can also find our podcast wherever podcasts are found. I hope everybody has had a very nice long weekend, Memorial Day weekend. We want to send our thanks to anybody who has served and given the ultimate sacrifice for this country. I think that you could still say enjoy your long weekend and not get in trouble like the vice president Kamala Harris did. But you know what? That's the world we're living in, Sap, where you can't say anything without being completely looked under a microscope.
Yeah, Nikki Haley said, unfit to serve based on those comments.
Little
I know our friend
extreme.
Jerry Callahan was, all bent out of shape. The community on the right was bent out of shape. Look, you have a great long weekend. Have a nice long weekend. That's part of it. But yeah, obviously, Memorial Day is to honor the fallen soldiers, victims of all of our wars that we've had over 200 plus years. So I get all that, but yeah, the both sides are a little bit sensitive at this
Oh yeah.
point, right? I mean, it's like it doesn't take much to set people off. There's a simple tweet with enjoy your long weekend turns into a political rift that the right just
Yeah.
can't deal with, and they call us on
Unfit
the
to
left
serve.
unfit to serve based on that, and they call us on the left snowflakes. I don't know who the snowflakes are. I think both sides have plenty of snowflakes.
Yeah, you'd think that she would have called like servicemen and women losers or suckers with that sort of
Sure.
statement,
Hmm.
but you know what? Again, like I said, you can't say anything without upsetting somebody at this point in time, and that brings us to the man of the past week, Sap. Fucking Kyrie Irving. That's how I'm going to refer to him from now on.
That's pretty much a good way to refer to him. Yeah, it's kind of like fucking Bucky Dent when I was
Yeah,
growing up because he
exactly.
hit the big home run to beat
Exactly.
the Red Sox in the '78 playoff game. That was actually, I thought for a while, I was 15 when that happened. I thought that was his first name. I thought that
Yeah.
was part of his name. So, but Kyrie is eating this up
Oh yeah.
because he went there earlier last week, and here we are 5-6 days later, and we're still leading off every podcast with Kyrie Irving, and he kind of loves that attention. And Boston held up its end of the bargain in a good sense until the final whistle. And then Cole
Yeah.
Buckley, 21 years old, of Braintree, wearing a Kevin Garnett shirt, decided to hurl a bottle of water at Kyrie Irving. And fortunately they found him, and they will prosecute him, which they should. But this kind of feeds right into Kyrie Irving's narrative that what happens in Boston. Now, this was all part of a 4 or 5 day period. It would seem like every day there was something happening, right? In
Sure.
New York, a fan spitting at Trey Young. In Washington, I mean, in Philadelphia, they're throwing popcorn on Russell Westbrook. There's racial slander taking place in Utah during that series, and Boston was well behaved till the game was over. It was like literally a buzzer beater, right? This idiot decides to throw a water bottle after Kyrie Irving, and look, you should never do that to anyone. That's dangerous, and it's irresponsible.
Yeah, it is. And, of the 17,000 fans, 16,999 of them, did what they were supposed to, which was boo the hell out of Kyrie Irving,
Right.
cheer for your team, and not do anything that crosses the line. And one, asshole has to ruin it for everybody and hurt
Yep.
the reputation of the team and the city and the fans. And that's just, it's so unfortunate. And I'm glad that they found him with the aid of other fans who pointed
Right.
him out very quickly to security. They immediately arrested him, and they intend on prosecuting him to the full extent of the law, and are issuing him a ban from the Garden. All the correct steps, but it's still the overarching story is that, oh well, this is exactly what Kyrie was talking about,
Hmm.
and it just this conversation is so frustrating, Sap, because again, it's one person can ruin it for everybody
Sure.
and make the entire fan base and the entire city look bad. Where I don't know that this 21-year-old kid, because really, if you're 21, you're still basically a kid, threw it at Kyrie Irving because he hates black people, or threw it at Kyrie Irving because he hates Kyrie Irving, or threw it at Kyrie Irving because he was had too many beers and thought that would be funny. I don't know what the intent was behind it. I know it's never appropriate or okay to hurl things at other human beings.
Hmm.
Uh, period. That's just not something that's okay to do in any setting. Um, but the conversation has now been switched to, obviously it must have been racist. Boston is racist. This proves the
Mhm.
whole point. And I think that's just a really unfair painting with a broad brush thing to do. And
Sure.
because of the actions of one stupid kid, maybe he is racist. I don't know. I don't know anything about him. I've seen his picture. That's as far as it goes.
Yeah, he may have been drunk. He may have bet the game. He had a bottle of water in his hand, and he decided to hurl it at Kyrie Irving from, I don't know, 30 feet. And luckily, he barely missed Kyrie Irving because it was dangerous. Um, there's hundreds of thousands of planes that land safely every year. We don't talk about them. We talk about the few that don't land safely. Unfortunately, that's what we do and what people do by nature, and that's what happens. Most of the fans acted accordingly. The night before, TD Garden was full with Bruins fans, and it was a great atmosphere. The Bruins were able to win the game 5-2. Friday night, the Celtics could not have full capacity, but that was a wonderful game where Jason Tatum went off and scored 50, and the Celtics were able to beat the Nets and get into the series for a quick moment until
Fleeting
Sunday's
moment,
game
yes.
when Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden decided to score 104 points on 60% shooting from the field, which is damn scary. But yeah, I mean, it's never good when something like this happens. It worked out that Kyrie had brought this up earlier in the week, and then 4 or 5 days later, he's kind of proven right. And again, I don't know Cole Buckley from anyone else, but it never looks good that he's hurling a full bottle of water at a opposing player. It's just not looking good. I mean, if you are insulting an NBA player, chances are you're going to be insulting a black player, right? I mean, 85% of the
Sure.
league is black. Um, and I would assume at most NBA arenas, more than 85% of the customers are white, more so at TD Garden. I mean, it's just probably 95%. So just by playing pure numbers, a white guy is most likely to hurl something at a black guy at an NBA game. That's the way the numbers work out. The thing that I find really disturbing, Jet, though, is here we are nearly 24 hours later, and the Celtics have not sent out a single tweet condemning Cole Buckley. Like they're silent. And
Well, they
it just
they
seemed
did say that they were arresting him. I mean, they said
Yeah,
that.
but the Celtics don't have to arrest him. That's TD Garden that arrested him. Wouldn't you put out something on Twitter to its multi-million followers that the Boston Celtics condemn what that fan did last night? Under no circumstance should our fans or any fans in the NBA ever throw anything at a player. Something simple. I mean, the New York Knicks did that, and they've basically been run for years by buffoons, although they're in better shape now that Leon Rose is running things with the Knicks. But put something out. The Celtics right now, as an organization, Jet, they appear to me like they've fallen and they can't get up. From Danny Ainge last Thursday going on Toucher and Rich, and from the seventh tee, with a driver in his hand, saying, "I don't know, I never heard any stuff in all my years here," and it's just essentially saying it's overblown and I haven't talked to anyone. While Marcus Smart says, no, there's been issues, and actually put forth a piece in the Players Tribune back in October. It's like the Celtics can't do anything right now. I mean, just put out a simple tweet. Doesn't take a lot to just condemn what that kid did.
Yeah, I'm
Just doesn't
you're
look right.
right. No, I'm surprised they haven't. I am. I don't know why they wouldn't. If maybe is it possible it has something to do with they don't want to put anything out until the police finish their investigation? I don't know.
Could be. I
I'm
mean,
just
could be.
speculating, Sep. I'm not
Yeah.
making an excuse. I'm just trying to find a reason. But you're right about that. And here's the problem I have with this whole thing too, Sep, is that um, Twitter and social media becomes such an echo chamber,
Hmm.
and then you get people also cherry picking quotes from Kevin Durant, and I did this last night too without reading the full context, so shame on me, saying that this is how people in Boston are, and the full context was they're passionate and they're
Right.
passionate about Kyrie, and I was saying it's bad to paint in a broad brush, and part of me does believe that Kevin Durant probably paints people in Boston with a broad brush of thinking they're
Sure.
racist. But that, in fairness to him, that wasn't his full statement last night.
No.
But you know, people take that and take what happened at the game with the water bottle last night, and then just run with it and say, okay, Kyrie was right. Boston is racist. All 17,000 of those fans are now culpable because of this one asshole, and that this is what the situation is anytime somebody's going to come into Boston. Whereas you should be looking at the majority of the fans who are on their best behavior. This one guy, he's going to be never going to be allowed in the Garden again, I hope. And I hope he goes to jail for a few days, honestly. I mean, he didn't actually hit Kyrie with the bottle, so I don't know how long you can actually put him in jail, but you could certainly fine him and ban him. And I don't know. I don't know what else the law, says, but certainly they need to be as aggressive as possible to prove a point. I just don't like the throwing up your hands on Twitter and saying, "Yep, this is Boston. Kyrie was right," because of one asshole.
No, but it is a coincidence, and a major coincidence, that it happened, right? I mean, he brought it up last Tuesday or Wednesday, and here we are 5 days later, and it did happen. You weren't going to have 17,000 people hurl bottles of water at Kyrie Irving. I mean, this wasn't a hockey game where David Pastrnak scores a hat trick and everybody throws hats on the ice, which I think is one of the dumbest things
Huge
as
waste of
well.
money.
Waste of
Hats are
money. I'm not
expensive.
spending, yeah, $25 hat I'm going to throw out on the ice
In
because
1980,
some guy
Sap.
I
Now they're
don't
like
know.
$50.
I know, that's why I only have one hat, and I bought it at Primark, and it's a Lakers logo on it, and I barely ever wear it because every time I wear it, people frown at me. But it's just, it is a coincidence that this happened. There's a great line in Seinfeld where, it's a major coincidence, and the author says, no such thing as a major coincidence. It's either coincidence or not a coincidence, but either way you want to paint it, it was a coincidence, and not a good look, to say the least. And this has happened in other arenas. I know a lot of people have said, well, it's because people haven't been able to get out, and here we are a year after the pandemic, and finally things are opening. I mean, you had a full house at a Bruins game on Saturday, a full house at a Celtics game on Sunday, and people are like, wow. I talked to a couple of friends that were in the city over the weekend and said it felt like pre-pandemic, which I think is
Right.
kind of dangerous, that we went from 25% capacity to 100% capacity. I think, we could have gone in stages, but that's a different conversation. In fact, I did talk to one friend who's in the radio business, who actually was at the Greatest Bar after the game last night,
Mm-hmm.
and he ran into Kyrie Irving's dad, Derek Irving, and had a nice conversation with him. And he said, such a nice man, really cool. And my friend asked him, how do you deal with what Kyrie sometimes has to put up with? Kyrie sucks and all of that stuff that was going on. He goes, what can I do? I have to remain silent because I don't want to get into fights with people. It's my son. Obviously I got to support him. My answer would have been, well, he's making 50 million a year, so he's going to have the last laugh anyway. But
I also saw, except he said the day before that he understands why Celtics fans would boo him. He's like, I
sure,
get it. He
yeah.
basically, he said, he told them one thing and then he did the other thing. So
I
I
mean,
think he
do
played
you remember?
professionally, so he
He
gets it. I
played
mean, he didn't play in the
professionally.
NBA, but
He didn't play, but he played in Australia. He's about my age. He graduated in '88, so he's about 3 years younger than I am. And I was just impressed that my friend said, just a really nice, engaging guy. It wasn't like, please don't talk to me, I'm in a foreign land. He knows Boston. He knows the fabric of the passionate sports fans. But I just look at all of this, and it just was just bizarre that happened, because it was so close to not happening. This didn't happen during the game like the guy in New York who spat at Trae Young. I mean, it's kind of like a similar thing that happened in Philadelphia with the fan throwing popcorn on Russell Westbrook. It's like he's almost in the locker room, and
right.
yet just at the end something crazy happens. But it was unfortunate. It was just unfortunate, and that's really the only way you could put it.
Did you watch any of the TNT guys break this down afterwards, Sep? I know it was late night by the time they got to it.
Yeah, that was already discussed from
I
hours
thought they
earlier
had
with the Lakers game. But
yeah. I thought they
they're
had an
older.
interesting statement. They are older, but basically what Shaq and Barkley were saying was that this happened when I was playing. This has always happened. It's always going to happen. Players need to get over it.
Yeah,
like they're saying, prosecute the guy, which is they're saying absolutely what he did was illegal and a crime. Prosecute the guy. He should be kicked out. But players need to get over it. They don't seem to think that it's a racial thing, which it may not. It very well may not be. They seem to think that it's fans being unruly like they always have been and always will be. And they very well may be right. that it's just I don't know how you can
It,
when you're allowing that many people in, Sap, logically you're gonna have a couple people who are
of course.
a-holes.
Yeah, and again, the crowd is predominantly white. Like 95% of the crowd is white, and 85% of the players are black. So the numbers would lead you to believe that the best chance of someone throwing something at a player is going to be a white guy throwing something at a black player. It doesn't make it right, but it's just the way the numbers work. You remember when LeBron signed with Miami, his first game back in Cleveland? They were throwing batteries at him. I mean, the booing was way worse that night than it was Friday or Sunday at the Garden for Kyrie Irving, because LeBron had been there 7 years. That was his hometown. He had the decision. It turned a lot of people off. With Kyrie, it was 2 years, and yeah, he promised he was going to resign here, but I never believed it. I know you and Mike Molino did. I at that time I said I don't trust Kyrie because I followed him a little more closely than you guys, being a LeBron guy and
Right.
seeing what Kyrie's kind of all about. So that wasn't really a surprise. But yeah, I mean, LeBron faced a lot of vitriol when he went back to Cleveland for the first time. And by the way, it was a regular season game. He didn't sit out. I mean, Kyrie didn't play at TD Garden last year when they had fans in the stands. He only played about 20 plus games. And then this year, when he came here to play, there were no fans in the stands. So this was the first opportunity he was going to face fans. He wasn't very good Friday night. Sunday night, he was spectacular, which is no surprise. No matter what you say about him, he is a spectacular basketball player. That's
Sure.
what makes it, I think, frustrating. It's not you. I think Celtic fans look and go, what could have been? You know, you could have had Kyrie Irving and maybe he recruits another player, and it's the Celtics who are the Nets, not the Nets being the Nets. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of the
No, I think there's
frustration.
frustration. Absolutely.
Yeah. And but it still doesn't justify doing what that fan
No,
did.
nothing does. Nothing does. Unless Kyrie Irving threw something at him.
No,
Nothing
and Kyrie
justifies that.
stomped on the logo, I guess.
I want to
So
talk about that too,
does
Seth.
that really lead to the guy throwing the water bottle?
I don't
I'm
think they had anything to
assuming
do with each other. I
nothing to
don't
do
think
with
they
each
had
other,
anything to do with
only
each other.
because Cole Buckley was probably so shit-faced, he had no idea that Kyrie stomped on the
I
floor.
don't. You couldn't see it from the stands. Couldn't.
No, you couldn't, and it wasn't like a 10-second stomp on the floor. He didn't do a dance. Before you get into that, I do remember in the 84-85 season, Gerald Henderson had been traded the prior offseason from the Celtics to the Seattle Supersonics
Right.
for a first-round pick, which turned out to be Len Bias. So he wanted more money from the Celtics. They wouldn't give him more money, so they traded him to Seattle. He played one game as a member of the Sonics at the Garden, and the Sonics upset the Celtics. At the end of the game, and Gerald Henderson had a double-double, points and assists. He played a great game. He took the ball and spiked it on the logo. Now, again, this is 1985. We're talking 36 years ago. People didn't have cell phones. You know, the local coverage was probably in a commercial break and they were getting ready for a post-game show. So, but I was sitting there and I do remember that. And I think Howard Bryant tweeted that out last
Yeah,
night.
he did.
And I kind of refreshed my memory. I said, I remember being at that game. And then we went into the locker room and interviewed Gerald Henderson. And he was, you know, proud that he had such a good game and beat the Celtics. He loved being with the Celtics, but they wouldn't pay him. So he went elsewhere. He spiked the ball right on the logo as well. But again, Gerald Henderson wasn't Kyrie Irving. They actually traded him. Kyrie left. So it was different. Plus, Kyrie Irving's a totally different level player than Gerald Henderson, although Henderson played on a couple of championship teams. In fact, I had a huge play in the 84 finals. He's the one who stole the ball from James Worthy that, you know, enabled the Celtics to win in overtime. So he had his contributions to a couple of championship teams. Kyrie Irving, obviously a much better player. But with Kyrie, it was almost like now you see the Celtics as the 7 seed. Their second best player is injured. Their third best player didn't play last night in Kemba Walker. Their sixth best player, Robert Williams, the third, is always injured. And you're looking at the Nets just absolutely destroy you. There's frustration there, but it just never justifies what happens. What did you think of Kyrie? They say stomping on the logo. He kind of like wiped this sneaker on the logo. Okay, so he stomped on the logo. You as a Celtic fan, I'm not a Celtic fan. Were you offended by that?
Yeah, it pissed me off. It really did piss me off. Because I think he should
now
have
you sound
nothing...
like Nikki Haley a little bit. Like
no,
I
don't. No, I don't. Listen. Here's the biggest problem I have with it. Before I get into the actual stomping on the logo thing, people were not allowing you on Twitter last night to talk about it, saying, well, that doesn't justify the water ball throwing. No one's saying it justified the water ball throwing. They're saying you can't equate the two. No one's equating the two. What people were doing on Twitter was they're making straw man arguments and saying, you cannot talk about this logo thing. We must only talk about the water thing. And what I was saying was, why can't you talk about both? I'm not saying one is a crime. One is not a crime. That no one's equating them. I didn't see a
No,
single person on Twitter saying, well, he threw the water ball because Kyrie did this,
no.
or what Kyrie did was worse. I didn't see anybody doing that. But I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, if you're, if you're thinking that was justification, then something's really wrong with you.
Yeah,
I
never.
didn't see a single person doing that. I mean, I'm sure
Well,
there were, because there's millions of people on Twitter, but for the most part, I think that was a straw man, completely
right.
unfair argument saying we can't possibly talk about Kyrie doing
And
this
and
because of the water
and
bottle.
and millions of brilliant, rational people on Twitter. So I can understand why, the conversation wasn't really that in depth. No, they're two totally different things. One was a criminal act. The other one was Kyrie trolling, which I think that's pretty much what he does most of the time. I think he's a professional troll. Doesn't make him a bad guy. Makes him a little bit strange. Look, I don't get offended with logos. I mean, I was in the Bruins locker room a couple of years ago after a game, and I did step on the logo in the center of the locker
By
room, and
accident.
by accident. I can't see too well, so that's a good excuse. But one of the PR people said, next time don't step on the logo. A player didn't tackle me or anything like that. So yeah, I'll respect that. I've never been big into symbolism. I think sometimes it puts people in some weird places like flags, logos, all of that stuff. That's all well and good if you have fun with it, but if it gets too serious where I can't believe he's stepped on the logo and you're really offended by that, then
Well,
I don't know.
he did it to intentionally be
Of
a
course.
dick and disrespectful.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't like it, because he did it to intentionally be disrespectful. And I see a lot of ex-Celtic players are upset about it today. Glenn Davis, Kevin Garnett's very upset about it today. Cedric Maxwell was upset about it. It's disrespectful, Seppi. And he has no reason to not like the Celtics organization, who bent over ass backwards to acquire him, make everything good for him, make excuses for him. Unlike the Patriots or the Red Sox, have not ripped him out the door.
No.
And if anything, they've been overly complimentary of his time in Boston. Brad Stevens saying, he's a tremendous player, very thoughtful guy, really great guy. I love coaching him. They have been overly complimentary. So I don't know what his possible issue with the Celtics organization could be, or the
Yeah,
fans who loved him when he was here.
they did. And now they obviously hate him, despise him, use whatever adjective you want. Yeah, the Celtics of the four major teams in Boston do the best job of not, sending you out the door and kicking you in the ass. I mean, the Red Sox are famous for that. I mean,
They're
they did with
masters
Terry
of it. Yeah.
Francona. Every player that, leaves and it's not a great situation, it's the player's fault. The Patriots are just obviously the same thing there. It's always someone else's fault, not the organization's fault. Even the Bruins, when Tyler Sagan left, we heard all sorts of reports that, they had to have him locked up in his room during the 2013 Stanley Cup Finals and have someone guard the door because he was that,
No, it's
drunk
standard
or
practice.
whatever.
They rip
That's
players
what they
out the
do.
door.
And the Celtics don't do it. I don't think you're getting anywhere in the NBA if you do that. I think the NBA players are of all the major sports teams, the union in Major League Baseball is damn strong, but the players itself are so unified in the NBA that, like you very rarely ever see an NBA player criticize another NBA player, right? Like off the court or anything. I mean, occasionally
No,
you'll
ex-players
get something.
criticize current players.
Ex-players do, and I think there's some jealousy there because you look at the size of the contracts, and the guys from the 80s talk about how difficult it was in the 80s to play. And look, the scoring in the 80s is the same as it is now. So I don't know how that happened. If they were playing football out there, they must have, had Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, and Roger Craig playing, because, I went to those games. Yeah, there was some physicality, sure, but, it wasn't quite what people make it out to be. We do remember McHale clotheslining Kurt Rambis in the 84 finals. Those things happened. Bird was fighting with the Pistons all the time. Robert Parrish cold cocked Bill Laimbeer and didn't even get thrown out of the game, got suspended for the next game. So I get all that, but the old guys always do that because they want their era to sound better, right? Like every player from the 80s will laughs at you if you think that LeBron's better than Michael Jordan, because they all played against Michael Jordan.
Right.
So to validate their careers, they're going to pump up Jordan rather than pump up LeBron James. So yeah, and look, Maxwell was a professional troll himself, and I love Max. Loved him as a player. He was a great interview after games. I don't understand what he says on the radio most of the time because I don't think he's really analyzing the game, but he's entertaining in his own
He's got catchphrases.
fashion. He's got great catchphrases, which I still don't understand, but I love Max. But Maxwell in the '84 finals was constantly giving the choke sign to Magic Johnson and James Worthy when they were at the free throw line. He was calling them the fakers. He called Magic Johnson Tragic Johnson. So, I mean, he was trolling at some point. He didn't, I guess, spit on the Lakers logo or wipe his sneaker on the logo, but he was kind of disrespecting and trolling. But it was more accepted back then. It was gamesmanship, right?
It's trash
So,
talking too. I mean, trash talking is part of
right.
basketball and
I mean,
stuff
who
like
who
that.
trash
Do
talked
you
more
not?
than Garnett?
No, do you not find this at all like disrespect? What about childish, Sap? Do you find it childish?
Childish, yeah, childish, yeah. I'll say childish,
For
but
somebody
I'm
who
not
thinks that he's above it all and is the smartest guy in the room,
right.
don't you think that this is a little bit beneath
Of
doing
course.
something like somebody who thinks so highly of themselves?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? At some point, it's not going to end well in Brooklyn. I mean, they may win a title this year. They're so damn good. But within a year or two, he's going to, all of a sudden think he should be the number one player on a team. And he's going to be in the same locker room with two guys who are better than him, Kevin Durant and James Harden. And he's going to, cause some issues there. I think he's still the biggest reason in the back of my mind thinking that they will not win the championship. Not as a player. I mean, he's phenomenal, but I could see him blowing this thing up at some point in the next month and a half. He's done it in the past. Why would he not do it again
Right.
when the spotlight's on him? He's a phenomenal player. I mean, no one doubts that. But yeah, I mean, no, it was childish as much as anything else. Again, I'm not a big logo, flag, symbolism guy, so maybe I don't really get offended by that stuff. It's like, ooh, the allure of the Yankees with the pinstripes. I'm like, they get players because they overpay for them, and all of those great things. And that's what the Lakers do. They overpay players. The Celtics overpay players if you try to get them. That's the best way to attract players, not the allure of the logo.
Yeah, I just I think it's disrespectful. I also it bothered me that not a single reporter asked him the question in the press conference. What the hell was that about? I
Right.
know
Yeah.
the conversation was obviously the biggest part was the water bottle. Of
Yeah.
course it was. It should have been. But, once you got that out of the way, was it really a problem to ask him about that? Well, I mean, does anybody have any balls in that media room?
No, I don't know. Did Shaughnessy cover the game last night? I'm not
I don't know if
sure,
he did.
because if he did, he would have been the one guy to ask. He,
But
he
they had
would have been the
national
one
people
guy.
there too. Shouldn't the national people have some balls about it, Sep?
No, they all have relationships with players. No one wants to offend the players. I tell you, the NBA players are the most protective of the four major sports, because they're very visible and they're accessible for the most part. Not the way it was years ago, where you literally could go into the locker room an hour and a half before the game and talk to a player, and then he'd come out and do an interview with you out on the court. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. But they're pretty visible. I mean, you see these guys after games. They're out there to speak. They don't generally hide. It's a little bit different now since COVID with the Zoom meetings and all of
Right.
that stuff, that the reporters aren't necessarily, they're certainly not in the locker room, and there's not as many around to ask questions. Yes, someone should have asked him, what was on his mind when he decided to, wipe his sneaker or stomp on the Celtics logo. Yeah,
There's
absolutely. It's a story, right?
of course it's a story, and there's all this conversation going on this past weekend and today about Naomi Osaka, the great tennis player
Right.
who's stepped out of the French Open because she wasn't doing her media obligations afterwards, was getting fined and citing mental health things. And so there's a big conversation now about athletes and the media and their press conferences. Should they have to do them? Should they not? And I think the argument against, I saw this on Pro Football Talk that Mike Florio wrote, saying that there's no need for these press conferences anymore because all these athletes have Twitter and they're able to connect with the fans in different ways. Whereas, prior to social media, this was the only way they connected with fans. And I push back on that because, the athletes completely control the entire message on their social media thing.
Sure.
And the media, typically you would expect them to ask questions that would maybe get them a little bit out of their comfort zone.
Yep.
That would be interesting for fans. Like, I want to know what he was thinking when he stepped on the logo. I think that was a good question. But if the media is unwilling anymore to ask questions that even could be perceived as somewhat challenging, then absolutely, then they should just bag the whole thing. Because seriously, what are they accomplishing if they're just giving him talking points, throwing him softballs? And this is not just a Kyrie Irving, this is every sport thing. If the media is not going to challenge these guys or men or women at all, or ask interesting questions, then they shouldn't have any obligation anymore, because then really, what's the point? What was the point of that, of a press conference where you just
Right.
talk about what he wants to talk about?
Yeah. No, I mean, he could just go on Twitter or Instagram and put out his message and not have to answer for any of his transgressions. Or, if a player doesn't have a good game and has to answer those questions of, what happened in the fourth quarter when you were 1 for 6 from the field, 0 for 3 from three, and had 3 turnovers.
That's not a common question anymore, though.
No. I mean, it just isn't. The message is controlled by the team, and I think the team has some responsibility to this, because the message is so homogenized that there's no authenticity from the players. There's no personality from the players. You can't even do one-on-one interviews anymore. If you try to do a one-on-one interview, they just push back, because everyone in there thinks you're breaking a story, so the rest of the people come over.
Right.
And you may just be doing feature story stuff, which has nothing to do with breaking news. It's unless maybe you break it by accident, but you decided to set up that interview with somebody. No, it's completely different than it was before. And I understand there's going to be change to all this. And we're talking about every player in the NBA, or at least the stars, are corporations. I mean, they make a lot of money. They protect their brand. They're doing other things outside of basketball, which is great. They all have huge sneaker deals. I mean, we're talking about guys. I mean, LeBron makes $100 million a year minimum. He's a corporation. He's not just a basketball player. And even guys that are the 25th best player in the league are making 25, 30 million a year just in salary, let alone other endorsements and all these other things.
A guy like LeBron, Sapp, you can ask him a hard question, but he knows how to dodge it if he wants to.
He knows how to answer
it.
He's so experienced.
I have no problem if an athlete doesn't want to answer a question or knows how to dodge it. I have no problem with that. That's fine.
Yep.
If they're in tuned enough with how to do this and how this all works to be able to successfully dodge it, more power to them. That's fine. But I just don't like the knowing everything that's going to happen before it happens in the press conference and saying, "Hey, Kyrie, when you hit that big shot, did it feel great?" Like, what the hell else is he going to say? I mean, this was a little bit different, because obviously you want to get the quotes about the water bottle. Of course you do. I get it. But you had time to ask the logo question too, is what I'm saying. And nobody had the balls to ask it.
Now, again, all of this stuff gets out suddenly. I mean, I'm assuming that most of those reporters knew what happened, that Kyrie stomped on the logo.
Yes.
Apparently Jason Tatum didn't know, because someone asked him about that and he said he didn't see it. Now, Tatum's a player, so at that point, I don't think he's gawking at the logo at center court, seeing if anybody's going to stomp on it. It's football's a little bit different with that, because the players are lingering along and if I remember, did the Patriots stomp on the Chargers logo in a playoff game back in 2006?
I think they made fun of the Sean Merriman dance.
But
there's been stuff with the Cowboys logo before.
Well, that's the most famous one. I mean, Terrell Owens scored a touchdown, went out to the logo, the star, the hallowed star of the Dallas Cowboys, and kind of spiked the ball. And
it's a no-no.
Then Emmitt Smith scored a touchdown, who played for the Cowboys, ran out there and did the same thing, as if to say, "I'm protecting the star." Terrell Owens got another touchdown, went out there, and then George Teague, who was on the field as a safety for the Cowboys, came right behind Terrell Owens. As soon as he did what he did on the star, Teague leveled him, and it started like a bench clearing brawl. I mean, the Celtics, are they going to react to this tomorrow? I mean, is someone going to
they're soft as a team. I mean, they didn't react when Kyrie saged the Boston Garden.
Right. Yeah. Or when what Kyrie said last week. Again, what Kyrie said last week had validity to it, because Marcus Smart said as much. Tristan Thompson said as much. I never refuted what Kyrie said. It's just that when Kyrie says things, you have to take it with a grain of salt because of the way he is. But
we didn't even get to talk about the Jaylen Brown statement that he put out about that,
which was fantastic.
I think he just nailed it. Basically,
as he usually does.
Kyrie Irving. We have a pretty good sense, Steph, that those two guys do not like each other.
I don't see that
at all. And that was part of the problem
in
Boston, because one is an actual really smart guy, Jaylen Brown, and one is, bright but pretends he's the smartest guy in the world, in Kyrie Irving. And Jaylen Brown, I think, very wisely didn't say Kyrie's name, but said, I think that there was an agenda to this, and framing the conversation about racism in the context of a playoff game is unproductive. I mean, if you haven't listened to it, I had retweeted it.
It's
I
great.
think Sap did too. It's worth listening to
Yeah,
because
that's why.
that's an actual really smart person who is
Oh God.
offering tangible solutions to this sort of stuff.
That's why he's my favorite Celtic. I mean, I do realize Jason Tatum's a superior player, and I love Jason Tatum. He's incredible to watch. I mean, how can't you like him and Deuce, who's out there at the games, got to be the cutest 3-year-old in the country. He's adorable. But Jaylen Brown's my favorite Celtic because there's a lot of depth there, and I really do like him. He's going to be president of the Players Association probably as soon as Chris Paul steps down. I could see Jaylen Brown running for the U.S. Senate, and I'm not being hyperbolic. He's that involved and that smart. So that's why he's someone that I really like. Yeah, you could tell right from the get-go that he probably sees through Kyrie's bullshit. And whereas most of the players in the NBA love Kyrie. I mean, you could tell he's not the best player on the Nets, but he's the Pied Piper of the Nets, right? Like Durant just follows him.
Yeah,
Durant, and Harden, I think, is kind of a one-man show unto himself. But Kyrie is the guy who brought Durant to Brooklyn more so than the other way around. And that becomes more frustrating for Celtic fans. It's like, man, if Kyrie stayed here, maybe Durant would have come here. And like I said, they'd be the Brooklyn Nets right now, peeling off championships. So yeah, that part of it is extremely frustrating. Who's the most likely Celtic to, elbow Kyrie somewhere? It's not going to be Jason Tatum. He adores Kyrie.
No, they like
it's
each
probably
other.
not going to be Marcus Smart because that's probably the obvious one. But I think he's friends with Kyrie.
I think he is. Thompson likes him.
They play together in Cleveland. Yeah, I don't think he likes him either. Is he gonna? Is it gonna be one of the young guys? I mean, is it Aaron Nesmith or Romeo Langford? I mean, if Grant Williams attempts it, he'll screw it up and hit someone else. He'll actually hit Jason Tatum and injure him because he can't even hit a layup. That guy. So yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying someone has to clothesline Kyrie Irving, but follow him hard and say you disrespected us by
they should
doing
give him
that
a hard
on the
foul.
logo. Someone should do something.
I have no problem.
Or
nothing,
because you're not,
nothing that it's going to injure the guy, but make him know.
Well, and
have some pride.
The best thing is to beat them. That ain't happening. I mean, if Brooklyn's locked in, I mean, what they did last night, I don't know if I've ever seen 3 great players play a better game together. Jet, they shot 60%. It's scary. I do think
Celtics
there's going to be resistance. I thought the Celtics, the Celtics did what they could do. Yeah,
but that's the difference. When Brooklyn plays well versus the Celtics play well, it's a 20-point gap.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't even as close as the final score would indicate. I mean, those 3 guys, they shot 60% from the floor, 55% from 3. They were 27 of 28 from the line. They didn't take a lot of shots. I mean, they scored 104 points. Harden had 18 assists, and Kyrie had 11 rebounds. Kyrie had as many rebounds last night as Kristaps Porzingis has had in the entire Dallas Clippers series, and he's 7'3". So I mean, it's like, oh my God, these 3 guys, were all focused and locked in and all in a roll because they do play well together. That's the scary part of it. It's Durant's probably the easiest all-time great player to play with. He really is. I mean, he took 20 shots last night, Jet, and had 42 points.
Yeah, he's so efficient. I mean, it's insanely efficient. I mean, ridiculous.
There was one basket he had. He was going to his left. And normally, if you're going to bank the shot in, you want to do it from about a 45-degree angle. He was at about a 25-degree angle. There was no angle there, and he still banked it in for the shot.
Nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do defending him.
He is the most unstoppable offensive force I have ever seen. I've said this a million times. If there's 25 different ways to score a basket, Kevin Durant has 30 ways to score a basket. There's no weakness in his game. You can't force him left. You can't force him right. You have to go out 40 feet out to cover him, and then he goes by you. And no, he's better than George Gervin was, who won multiple scoring titles. He's also about 5 inches taller with way better range. Like I don't know. You just hope he misses. That's about it with Kevin Durant. That's the way to defend him. And I don't know Jordan and Kobe were ferocious. They didn't have the offensive weaponry that this guy has. It's scary. 20 shots, 42 points.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. He's an amazing player. I mean, really, that's all it comes down to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's amazing. Yeah. And there's no answers for him. I do think in the game the Celtics won, I do think that they showed at least a small blueprint to Milwaukee for how you can beat them. You need to out-rebound them. You can't let them – they're too short. You can't let them win the rebounding battle because they're not playing tall guys on the court.
No.
You have to out-rebound them. You have to play physical with them.
You do.
You need to make fatigue Durant on the defensive end. You got to do those two things. Rebound, play physical with them. Those are the two things they don't want to do. And you got to slow down the game. The Celtics,
Yep.
You cannot play track. Nobody can play a track meet with them.
No.
You can't go back and forth with them. They will blow out any team in the league. That includes the Lakers, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Clippers, any team. You can't go back and forth with them. Got to slow it down and turn it into a slog of a game. I do think Milwaukee has the type of team that can do that. It's not easy. I mean, you have to basically play perfect, but they can. I think they have the players that can do it. But first comes down to, as you said, Sap, no rebounds, no rings, like Pat Riley said. Got to out rebound them. You cannot lose the rebounding battle to them, period. That is their weakness, is their rebounding and their interior defense. They're purposely playing with a small lineup because their three great players are amazing scorers. They don't need to play a true center. But you got to win the rebounding battle, or you have no chance. If they win the rebounding battle, they win the game, period.
I mean, if healthy, I think the Lakers could beat them in the finals. The Lakers aren't healthy. The way it looks now, the Lakers aren't going to the finals. I'm sure you're still confident that they are. I'm not as much now that Anthony Davis is going to be out for game 5 and maybe beyond with that groin strain, which is damn scary because he's now got 4 different injuries in his lower extremities, a groin strain, a knee strain, some problem with his Achilles, some problem with his calf. I mean, they're running out of body parts that he has issues with. All he needs now is a hip flexor and a contusion in his quad, and then he'll have like 6 different injuries going on. But
Bingo.
I think the Lakers could be, yeah, exactly. It feels like, that old game we used to play. I forget what it was called, Hospital or Operation. How the hell do I remember that? Hospital Operation. Yeah, it was like, here's Anthony Davis. What other thing is going to break down for him? The thing about Anthony Davis that I think of, and I know we're going to talk about the Lakers anyway. Do you think, as a junior in high school, he was 6'3". He grew 7 or 8 inches before his senior year to get to 6'10", 6'11". I wonder, I would have to do some research and talk to doctors or whatever, but do you think when someone has that much of a growth spurt, like 7, 8 inches in one summer, that they're more susceptible to injuries? It's like their body doesn't really fit. I just wonder if that's the case, because he's always been hurt.
Yeah, I think it's just some guys are, Sap. I don't know if it's the growth spurt. Didn't Giannis have the same sort of growth spurt? He's never hurt.
Giannis also works harder, though. I don't know if Anthony Davis is a workout warrior in the offseason. I know he's still disappointed, like I am, that the Packers lost, because he's a big Packers fan. But he's not LeBron in the gym. Let's put it that way. Giannis looks like he works his ass off in the offseason. Giannis is jacked.
No, he's
Giannis
a truck. He's a truck.
He looks like a giant version of Russell Westbrook. He's defined. He's 250 pounds. Kevin Durant's the other side of it, which I don't think he's ever lifted a weight in his life. But you know what? Don't start now, because you don't want to ruin perfection. He's the skinniest guy I've seen in the league. It's like since Tayshaun Prince.
When he got that shoulder injury, that I thought it was going to tear right through his skin, because he has no skin. It's just bone there.
Jason Tatum looks like Karl Malone next to him, right? Jason Tatum's filled out. He's probably 230, 235, big time. He's strong. You could tell going to the basket that, he's strong enough to get it there. He looks like Karl Malone next to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant, I don't know if he's 200 pounds, but know what?
He's string bean.
He is. And like he said, when he couldn't lift 185 pounds once at the combine, he's like, well, how heavy is the basketball? I don't really need to lift much more than this. No, he's just naturally he works on his game. You don't get to that point by being hardworking on his game, but he's not. Why bother lifting weights if you do what that guy does? But you look at Anthony Davis. I don't know if he's a workout warrior, and he still has kind of a guard's mentality out there. He's constantly cutting, and when you go to the floor, you're coming from
some guys are just
7
injury
feet.
prone, Sap. They are.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
You might have something to it. I'm not a doctor.
I don't know
anybody who's a doctor other than my personal physician.
I have a doctor. Yes, I'll talk to my doctor.
So maybe you might be right, but then again, it could be completely. It could be
just be injury prone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because the Lakers are in trouble.
Well, okay. So let's talk about this series now, Sap, since we've gotten the Kyrie and the Celtics thing out of the way. And we've talked about it so much now. So now it's 2-2. Phoenix has regained home court advantage. And the series is heading back to Phoenix for Game 5, which is always a humongous game because it's
Mhm.
the swing game. You get 2 chances. If you win it, you get 2 chances to win the series. Uh, Now with Davis, has he been officially ruled out of Game 5 or is he doubtful?
Sham said he's doubtful. I don't think he's going to play. I mean, that's a
Okay.
tough injury, a groin strain. I mean, that's there are different levels to it, but that can take some time. I don't know if you'll see him again in the series. Maybe they shoot him up
Can
for Game 6.
can the Lakers win without him against this Phoenix team? That's the question. I'm not sure he's out for the whole series, Sap. I have my doubts, but since we'll assume he is, since you're worried about it, can the Lakers win without him?
LeBron has to revert to LeBron of 3 years ago when he dragged Cleveland to the NBA Finals with a supporting cast that was probably the same as what the Lakers supporting cast is right now without Anthony Davis. I mean, you look at that roster, they don't have many good players. They've got LeBron, Anthony Davis. If
No, they're
Dennis
constructed
Schroeder's,
around Davis and LeBron. They're all
that's it.
complementary to those two guys.
But they're not even constructed correctly, Jet. They don't have shooters. Like LeBron's best with shooters. At least Cleveland in 2018 surrounded him with, Kyle Korver, J.R. Smith could hit some shots. They had some shooters. The Lakers don't have Ben McLemore is the best outside shooter, and for some reason he doesn't play much. KCP's hurt. Wes Matthews hit a couple shots on Sunday. Caruso looked like he was drunk out there for most of the game. Drummond's in the way. And I think if they're really going to be proactive, definitely not a shooter, certainly not a free throw shooter. I think they should start Gasol because Gasol can at least stretch the court out a little bit because he can shoot threes. So that can open up the middle for LeBron. LeBron's going to have to revert to 2018 LeBron, where he literally is the system. He's tried to fit into the system, with some possessions. He's a facilitator. He doesn't drive to the basket as much as he used to, maybe because he can't hit free throws. If that's in the back of his mind that I'm going to the line, if I get fouled, it seems like at best he's hitting 1 out of 2 from the free throw line, which is not good. He and Luka Doncic cannot shoot free throws. It's kind of like weird.
It makes no sense.
That two great players. I mean, Luka's shooting better from 3 than at the free throw line so far in the postseason. 41% on threes, 40.6% on free throws.
That's embarrassing.
And LeBron's shooting around 52, 53% from the free throw line. Not good. Not good at all. So maybe he's hesitant to go to the basket because if he gets fouled, he's going to the free throw line where he has no confidence. Because in the past, he's averaged about 9 free throw attempts per game in the postseason. He's averaging 4. So there's something going on there. He's going to have to attack. If he can attack, get to the cup, score, maybe get some people in foul trouble, that should open up for the shooters. But the shooters have to make their shots yet. The team's shooting 25% from 3 in this series. I know it's only 4 games, but you know what? It's a best of 7. It's time to wake up, the perimeter game of the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't understand why they take so many threes. When they start Drummond, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James, that is a huge front court, right? Use it. They did that in games 2 and 3 where they played big. They'll put bigs out there, but not play big. Play big, pound the ball inside. But now you don't have Anthony Davis, presumably for game 5 or maybe beyond. So now you're going to have to make those adjustments. I would start Gasol because he can stretch the floor. He's a really good passer. He's a good defender. He's a better defender than Drummond. Drummond's lost in the pick and roll. That's what they're going to have to do. LeBron's going to have to get back to 3 years ago where he's going out there and going to get you 32 to 35 points, double-digit rebounds, double-digit assists, and at times have to lock down Devin Booker. That's what he's going to have to do. Does he have that in his tank? There were times Sunday where he looked like LeBron of 2015, 2018. I mean, a couple of moves he made looked spectacular. I mean, the dunk off the pass off the backboard by Caruso, there are a lot of players in the league that can do that. He's just bigger than most of them. And then he had a 360 spin where he dunked with his right hand, which was spectacular. So he still has it in him. I don't know if he has it in him for 40 minutes. In that game Sunday, Jet, when he was on the court, the Lakers were +6. When he was off the court, they were -14. He may have to play. He may have to play 44 minutes. I mean,
yeah, it's like what the Celtics are doing with Tatum. It's like if he doesn't play, what the hell else are you going to do?
And the difference is Tatum's 23, LeBron's 36, and LeBron's also 30 pounds heavier. LeBron's a big man. So it's a lot to ask him, but that's probably what he's going to have to do because Anthony Davis, I can't count on him. Can you really count on him? Even if he comes back in game 6 or 7, he's going to get hurt in the next series.
He might, I despite Davis missing the whole second half and the Suns playing a pretty good game and Chris Paul by far played his best game of the series, they only won by 8 points. And now it's going to Phoenix for Game 5. I think it's a much more important game for Phoenix, honestly, than the
Yeah,
Lakers. It seems like the Lakers are on the ropes here, but if the Lakers have two cracks at closing them out, they'll win the series.
right.
Phoenix needs the two shots at it to have a
Yep.
chance. They can't. So, the Lakers might be looking like they're on the downside here with Anthony Davis. There's a lot of questions. Can LeBron manage the load? But I think all the pressure is on Phoenix in this game. I really do.
Absolutely.
And it's at home.
Absolutely. And we'll break it down more tomorrow because it's tomorrow night. But yeah, absolutely. Because if Phoenix doesn't win this, they have all the momentum on their side. No Anthony Davis, Chris Paul looking healthier. If the Lakers somehow win this game, then they have two cracks to win this series. And if you're Phoenix, you got to win Game 5, and then you got to go into LA and try to win Game 6. Obviously, you're trying to win every game because you don't want to get to Game 7, even though the game would be in Phoenix. We know what LeBron James does in Game 7s. His numbers are ridiculous in Game 7. So, that's part of it. But again, he's not LeBron of 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I think next year he'll be back to being, what he is. He's just obviously the injuries have added up this year, and the conditioning can't be there when you're away that much. You can work as much as you want in the gym, doing your cardio wherever, but there's nothing quite like playing basketball to get in basketball shape. So that's part of it. But some of these other guys have to step up somewhat. I mean, can you hit a three? Can you hit a free throw? Can you, they play defense. The Lakers always play defense. Even yesterday, like you said, Jed, they held Phoenix to 100 points, 43 in the second half. It's that the Lakers offense went asleep. How many times have I told you this Lakers offense is so frustrating? They will go 3-4 minutes where they don't even get a good look, let alone a basket.
Yeah.
It's kind of frustrating. I think he tries to get everybody involved. And then at times, he gets a little bit detached or he's on the bench, obviously, and it's all chaos, but he's going to have to force the issue a little bit.
I've come more to your side of it, saying that last year's team was a better constructed team. I think this team has more talent, maybe, because I think Schroeder's better than Rondo at this point. Harrell, I think, is a better player than Dwight Howard at this point in their careers, but the pieces fit a little bit better last year.
Danny Green. I mean,
Danny Green. They missed Danny Green. They missed the shooting.
The shooting and the defense, right? I mean, Danny Green, he's not an elite defender anymore, but in this series, he could check Devin Booker
above average,
a half dozen possessions, right? And no coincidence. Danny Green goes to Philly. They end up with the best record in the East, and he's playing a key role there. He's a winner. I mean, he could be winning his fourth title with 4 different teams, right? Didn't
he's
he win
Robert
2
Horry.
wins?
I think you said
he's
that
Robert
a couple
Horry.
weeks ago, Sap.
He's Robert Horry. He'll hit a big shot. He's going to go wherever he goes. He's one of those guys that
plug and play guy.
Exactly.
Any system.
I mean, any system. He's smart. I would have kept him. Like, I don't know the need to turn over and you bring in, maybe in a vacuum, Matthews is better than Danny Green, but Danny Green's a proven winner.
The Harrell thing was a clutch sports thing.
Yeah, and he can't even get off the bench. He played 2 minutes Sunday. Like, he can't be any worse than Markieff Morris, who almost broke the backboard on one of his shots. Like, can he be worse than those guys?
They should make some tweaks to the rotation for sure. I mean, we'll see how good of a coach Vogel is, or LeBron.
Yeah. LeBron will put. I think Gasol should be in the starting lineup. Drummond is he's in the way. He really is. Right. He's just in the way.
All right, Sap, let's get caught up on just where the rest of the series stand. So we have the Celtics we talked about. They're down 3-1. That looks poised to be over on Tuesday in Brooklyn with a chance to close it out. The Hawks have now taken a commanding 3-1 lead over the Knicks. I think that surprised everybody, but the Hawks roster is just proving to be superior to New York's roster. And I think that's been sort of the biggest standing point there, and that Trae Young's been the best player in that series by a wide margin. Very consistent. We talked about the Lakers. That's 2-2. The Clippers-Maverick series makes absolutely no sense. Nobody can defend their own home court. Now it's 2-2 in LA, and they're in the place they don't want to be at all, which is home now. But all the momentum is back with the Clippers in that series. The Bucks finished off their series over the weekend, Sab, in a dominating fashion over the Heat. So that was a sweep that nobody was expecting, but Milwaukee looking strong and looking for a great series against probably Brooklyn, unless everybody on the Nets manages to get hurt in their game against the Celtics on Tuesday. The Nuggets and Trailblazers, to nobody's surprise, that series is now at 2 games apiece. Though, real quick, Sap, that game made no sense at all. the best players in that game played terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Dame Lillard, what he hit 1 field goal the entire game, and Portland
He
was
was
able to win
awful
in a
and Jokic
blowout.
was awful.
Yeah. What a weird game that was. It really was.
Jokic
There's been
had
some weird
16
games.
points and 1 assist in that game. Lillard had 10 points and was 1 of 10 from the floor in that game.
It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. It happens. And I think you look at the Western Conference, Jet, the home teams are 5-10 so far. So it's been home court disadvantage. Phoenix and the Lakers have both won on each other's courts. Dallas, LA has been dominated by the visiting team. In that series, the Clippers Dallas series really kind of switched when Dallas was up 2-0 and up 30-11 late in the first quarter of game 3. At that point, you're like, this series is over.
Right.
And then the Clippers fought their way back. And now Luka's dealing with some sort of nerve issue, but I think he's going to be fine. The Clippers, they're still the team that I think, look, the Lakers, let's just put them aside. Without Anthony Davis, they're not going to the finals. I don't think, unless LeBron's just been holding back and is going to be
He's
LeBron
done it before, so you can't
He's
count
done
him
it
out.
before. You can't count him out. And again, I don't think the West has any real dominant team, so I wouldn't put it past them to say, okay, it's winning time. Let's just
we'll talk about more tomorrow when they play.
But the Dallas and Clippers don't come back till Wednesday, so we have plenty of time to preview it. There are 2 games tonight, which are the 1 and 8 seeds playing each other, and Philly with a chance to finish off a sweep against Washington. So that's going to be an interesting game as well.
Yeah, and Phillies looked really strong. Embiid's of more than any player this year, it does seem like he's on a mission personally. Yeah. He's just upped his game so much, and you see the intensity he plays. I loved when he, I think he had a big shot or a dunk or something in Washington, and they were booing him, and he was putting his hands to his ears.
He's great.
More. He loves it. I tweeted this out.
Great.
He's on the Sixers. I should hate him. I love him. I love him. One of my favorite players in the league.
He's the closest thing to Shaq as a personality, as a big man, because mostly the big men are kind of quiet, docile. Like Anthony Davis isn't a personality. I mean, even if you want to call Anthony Davis a big man, he considers himself a stretch 4. But you get my point that the dominant big men in the league, Doncic is a very quiet guy. I think I heard him speak for the first time last week. Obviously English is not his first language. But with Embiid, he's Shaq, right? I mean, I
love him. He's great.
Got that type of personality. And Shaq, who doesn't compliment big men very often, always compliments Joel Embiid. He says, this guy could be better than me. I mean, there's not a lot of 7'2" guys.
He says it's not even close in terms of their skill set. He said he's way more skilled than me.
He shoots threes. He shoots 85% from the free throw line. He, can take the ball off the dribble to the basket. I mean, it's just like, where's this guy come from? He really is. I mean, there's no... I told you in the pecking order, if the Lakers are out, I want to see Milwaukee win the championship, and probably after that, Philadelphia. I just can't deal with Brooklyn winning it and Durant getting a 3rd title, and they're going to say, well, he's really better than LeBron. And I can't deal with the Clippers with Kawhi, because then Kawhi will be the other player with, 3 titles on 3 different teams and 3 finals MVPs. I can't deal with that. So if the Lakers aren't there,
team, the Clippers,
that is the strangest team.
A weird team. But
your leader is non-communicative. I mean, that's the best way to put it. Like Kawhi is silent. I mean, it's like you got Harpo Marx leading them.
So, right, Sap, while we're finishing up the show, the Sixers are up by 5 in the first quarter, so it's early goings in that game against the Wizards. I expect them to close this out tonight. I don't think the Wizards have anything left in the tank, really.
No, I mean, it's
just such a mismatch.
Oh, it is. It's the perfect 1 versus 8. At least in the West, Memphis has put up a fight against Utah because Ja Morant is playing at a high level, and they got a really good team, I think, Memphis, for an 8
and that
seed.
game's later tonight, Sap. So we'll just do the line real quick. That's 5.5. Utah is in Memphis and trying to go up 3-1.
Yeah, I like Memphis plus the points there. I'm going strictly with the zigzag, and right now the zigzag is 12-10 against the spread. So the zigzag tonight says take Washington plus, I believe, 8.5. Is that what Washington's getting against Philadelphia?
I don't have that spread in front of me.
I think it's around 8.5. Yeah. So whatever it is, take Washington plus the points and take Memphis plus the points to cover tonight, according to Zigzag. So that's the picks of.
I'm going to take the Jazz, and I think they'll win by more than the 5.5 there.
Okay.
By the way, when we'd like to bag on Rudy Gobert in this show too, as much as TNT does. but I think you can pretty much see who's the most valuable player in that team, and it's not Rudy Gobert. They look a lot different when Donovan Mitchell is on the court.
Oh, not even close. I mean, this is a league dominated by mostly wings, right? But I mean, Mitchell's not a wing. He's only 6'2". He's a guard, but he's an alpha, right? I mean, I've compared him to Dwayne Wade. I think that's a pretty good comparison. I don't think he's as good as Dwayne Wade. Not as big as Dwayne Wade. I don't think he's as good a defender, rebounder, but he's kind of a poor man's version of Dwayne Wade, but has the same, leadership value and the same mentality that he's got that Mamba mentality. I hate using that term. Why did I use it? But sometimes at a loss for words. But I think that he's obviously the best player on that team. Rudy Gobert is a nice piece, right? He's always a contender for defensive player of the year, can rebound, and talk about a team that can shoot threes. Holy crap.
They
If
can shoot
LeBron,
threes.
the team that LeBron should be on is Utah. I mean, that would be kind of an
Yeah.
odd look. LeBron playing in Utah after he said, no one
Well, maybe he
uses
likes
their
to
players.
ski.
Yeah, maybe he likes to get, white people screaming racial epithets at him every game.
Or wants
Whatever.
to become Mormon. I don't know, Sap. I don't know
Who
everything
knows?
about
I
him.
mean, maybe he'll, show Karl Malone how to win a championship. So, yeah, that would be the perfect team for him with all those threes. My God, he'd average 15 assists a game. He's playing on a team that they can't shoot, which is what he needs to have.
So we'll see what happens, but I think Utah's going to win that game tonight, and
Okay.
and we'll preview the second round. But I think that's where they're going down.
Yep.
And so that's going to do it for us, Sap. And we got a lot of games to look at tomorrow. Probably the end of the Celtics season that we'll preview. Blazers and Nuggets back at it, trying to break the tie, and the Lakers and Suns we'll talk a lot about tomorrow, as we are going to really look into this AD injury. So it'll be pretty Lakers centric, I would imagine. Tomorrow we'll react to these games tonight. And see if anybody has the balls to ask Kyrie Irving about stepping on the court. Probably not, is my guess. Maybe
Nope.
Kevin Garnett will storm the media room and ask the question because he was upset about it today. Another reason I love him.
They got to get him involved in the organization. I mean,
oh my God, please!
He'd certainly bring something to it.
At least he's like aware of what's going on. The rest of them. You would think that the Celtics were the team with like a 90-year-old owner who has no idea what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Like, I love Wick Grossbeck and the rest of the ownership. I do. I like Danny Ainge. I think, again, as I said a million times, I think that second heart attack that he suffered 2 years ago has taken a lot of steam out of him. I don't think he's as invested as he has in the past. So he's got to slow down. Maybe it's time for someone new. And we know Brad's
boring.
Like a pilot, a U.S. senator. Like, the temperament's awesome. I love it. But there's times where you got to get a little fired up.
They should just let Jaylen Brown do all the interviews for the team from now on, honestly.
Not a bad choice.
All right, so that's going to do it for us, Sap. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. We talk about all things NBA, even though it seems like we just talk about Kyrie Irving. It's his fault. He's really just making us... God, I really can't stand that guy. Screw the guy who threw the water ball at him. Prosecute him. I hate that guy. He made us all look bad. But I'm not going to suddenly say I like Kyrie Irving today because he had a water ball thrown at him. No one should ever do that to another human being, like I said, but it doesn't make me like Kyrie Irving anymore, Sap. I'm just speaking my truth. We'll be back tomorrow for a very Laker-centric John Sapichetti, LeBron James special episode. Make sure you find us on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. And if you want just the audio version, we are wherever podcasts are found. If you just type in the name of the show, the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Sap will also tweet out the link always, and I'll retweet him. At JohnSap25 is his Twitter. Make it nice and easy for you. We will talk to you tomorrow, everybody. See ya.